All right, so we're back on the Cushman project. Last time we worked on the front corner and got all that major rust repaired. And I'm basically just working my way around the whole entire body, and we're just tackling the major areas of rust. Then we'll go back and fix all the little spots. So the real big offensive spot is right here, dead center in the back. It kind of works out, even though it sucks to fix this. We want to do a custom taillight here. So while we're at it fixing this rust, we're gonna weld up this seam here, get it smoothed out, and then we can start working on doing some fun custom work after that. So I'm going to dig in here, cut this all out, and figure out exactly what's underneath here and how we can tackle this repair. All right, so we got our rusty piece of metal cut out. You can see this thing was really bad. I mean, it's just flopping around. And we even cut a piece above here that, we cut out separately. And a couple things to mention here I want to stop and show you guys. We mentioned it on the last panel. Majority of the rust on this, and a lot of times when you see on vehicles as well, is where panels are doubled up or overlapped from the factory. So all of this rot here that you see that's kind of centralized around where the taillight was, where it was overlapped, and then also where this back support panel that's spot welded on, where that was, water was able to get trapped underneath of there and moisture, and over time it rotted, and obviously, worst case scenario, it ended up like this. So what we're going to do is make a patch panel for this section, and we're also going to make another brace. The brace actually comes from the bottom here all the way up to the top where this little shelf in the trunk area is, and it spot welds to that, and that's what supports this back panel from flopping around with the taillight and everything. So we're going to make all of this like it was stock before we actually start modifying. So we're going to do all the repairs before we even think about doing any modifications. So I'm going to work on making this back brace, and then we'll get our back panel made to go over top of it. Hey, there you go. That's how quickly a DA and Fast Etch can clean a panel. Video done. All right, so now that we got our patch all cut out and it fits half decent, we're ready to start putting some shape into it before we do our final trim and welding the patch in. So this has a real light radius to it, just a real shallow radius. And much like the last panel that we made, we're going to use this little homemade pipe anvil that I have. Now you can do this over basically any round surface. All it's doing is just allowing you to create a consistent radius. So that's why we're using this pipe here. So because this is a much more shallow of a radius on it, we're not going to have to put it into the pipe and bend it as hard as we did with the front corner. So what I'm going to do is line up my center marks. Now, even though the center marks don't look like they're in the center of this patch, that's the center of the overall back panel of the scooter. So that's where we're going to line that up with the center of the pipe. And then when I start bending this, that's going to give us our line down the center, which is going to kind of be the peak of the radius is going to give you that nice final smooth transition when we're doing it. So I'll put some light pressure on this. I'll check with my radius gauge, which was a number 12 radius. Make sure that we're a 12 throughout the whole entire panel. Then we can start test fitting it and doing our final tweaks to the panel to get it to fit and get it ready to weld in. Yeah, there we go. We're getting close. Just going to make everything match up and flow. So I'm probably going to get this side to fit half decent, and then we'll start kind of just tweaking everything, and there'll probably be a little bit of excess we'll have to trim on one side. All right, so now that I got the panel fitting pretty good and I got it trimmed and it's really darn close, what I usually do from here is it's a good idea to put some witness marks. So I like to just put 3 or 4 little lines right in a row that go from your patch panel to your original metal and put them throughout the panel. And what that does is it allows you to, every time you take the panel on and off, you can fit it to the exact same spot. Because when you're at this point in the game, all it takes is just rotating like the right side down a tiny bit or the left side up or whatever, and it'll seem like the panel doesn't fit, and then you'll start sanding different areas and you'll get out of control, and then you'll have like a big like half-inch gap or something because you had the panel moved every single time you're fitting it. So I put those marks as I start to dial in the panel and get the fit really good. Those help me just really quickly go on and off the panel, and I don't need to make holes like Cleco holes that I have to fill later. I can just use these witness marks. Gets me really close. So now that I have the panel fitting pretty darn good, I'm going to do a little bit more adjustment. Then we can work on doing the wire edge on the bottom, fit it back up, and then we can start tacking it in place. Oh yeah. Just took a tweak with my hand to get it back to 12. It's perfect. And the front obviously didn't change because we didn't mess with it, but didn't affect it too much. Not as bad as that front panel. That was a pretty difficult panel. All right, so we got the outside skin fitting pretty good. Got this lower edge all wire edged. I'm really happy with how that's coming out. Now basically what we need to do is we have a 16 gauge inner brace here. As you can see, it's all rotten, but basically it sits right on the edge of the wire edge on the inside, and then it came all the way up and it was spot welded to that inner shelf right about the center, or not center, but right across the top here. And it was spot welded in there. So we're going to recreate that. So I'm going to make a little paper pattern, cut it out of some 16 gauge, give it a little bend on the pipe anvil, fit it in, and then we can start welding everything together, and we're on the home stretch. All right, so the inner brace we got bent. I just quick sprayed a little bit of rust encapsulator on both sides to keep everything sealed up, because we're going to be overlapping this section over the shelf area. So we want to make sure that that's all coated and rust proofed as much as possible before we plug weld everything together. All right, so I got this panel all welded in place. I made sure all the seams were welded up. I went over with the flap disc and just knocked down any major highs in the welds with the flap disc. Now what I'm doing is working with a heavy slapper spoon and a dolly. Now on the top I'm using this small doorknob style dolly to fit in and hammer around and smooth everything out. In these big flat areas I was using this larger dolly here. And what we're trying to do is just slap and get all the metal to kind of go in the right direction. So we want everything to roll around the back here and look natural when it's all done. We're not trying to get it so that it's perfectly metal finished. We're just trying to get something that looks acceptable and all of the major lows and issues are out of the panel so we can move on to the next repair. All right, so we got the patch panel welded in. I spot welded in those last couple shots. I spot welded on the back side, the inner brace. That's all together. Everything's really nice and strong, and we don't have a giant rot hole right here, which is the big win of the day. Now, the patch did take a little bit longer than I expected. This metal was a little bit thin around where the patch was, just because of the area was so rotted and the metal was even a little thin into here. We really had to take our time in welding everything up and work with the holes that would open up. That's just the reality of doing this stuff when you're trying to weld on old metal. Sometimes it's thin and you need to take your time and just fill those holes in and work at it as you go. So we didn't get to the areas right in here and right in here that are thin and rusted, where it basically overlaps this the trunk shelf area. So what we're going to do is work on those another time. But right now I'm really happy that I got this rear panel in. We got the front corner welded in, and now it's like sort of solid, sort of. So that is really exciting to me, and that's the biggest thing I'll say with you guys that are starting out with doing these projects, or you're taking on a larger project, is focus on the small wins. Patching these little patches is a huge step in the process, and don't focus on how rough it still is. Focus on the good. So that's what we're doing today, and I'm really happy with it. So next time we're going to work on actually doing some custom work. I want to take a break from all the heavy, dirty rust repair, and we're going to work on putting a 39 Ford style like teardrop taillight into the back of this, which should be pretty fun, and we'll show you guys the way that we tackle that and get that all in there. If you guys like these projects, definitely make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn the little bell icon on your notifications so that you will be notified when we have updates on this project and all of our other projects that we have going on. And make sure you follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and all other social, because we're doing live updates as we're working on these projects, and you guys can follow along each time that we're working on. Thanks, guys. Catch you later.